that you do around self-care? Why is it so important to you?
So, going back to my family life growing up, it was always, mental health was a conversation. Therapy was super normalized in my household.
That's so good.
Addiction, yeah, we all went to therapy, at least the girls did.
Yeah.
Um, all went to therapy. There's addiction in my family, depression, and it was just always an open conversation. And I was also the person in the family who was, you know, didn't rock the boat. I was the one that didn't really have any problems. I took care of everyone else. I was the glue of the family, quote unquote. And I never really understood. I so badly wanted everyone else to just take care of themselves. Like my whole life, I was just like frustrated with people for not taking care of themselves, not just in my family, like in general. I would just get frustrated because I felt like I had to take care of everyone else. So it would frustrate me that I knew all the answers and like I knew what you have to do, but like why couldn't you take care of yourself? And I always took care of myself. I didn't rock the boat. So I sort of realized like I can't take care of everyone else unless I'm taking care of myself first. I can't, radiate positive energy for people if I'm not truly happy. So I started just seeing a lot of value in going for walks and like all of these things in where I was being super mindful and putting time towards myself and not everyone else. And I just wanted to spread that message because again, it goes back to like I wish I had a YouTuber like that when I was in middle school and being made fun of and wanted to be on camera and didn't want to be made fun of and all of that stuff. I want to spread that message of like, take care of yourself first. It's okay. And I never want it to be like, oh, the self care that's like glamorized and like trying to sell you on stupid self care products. It's really
Yeah.
just the message of take care of yourself, listen to your intuition, and then everything you'll see, like everything else falls into place. Because once you're taking care of yourself with things like journaling, going for a walk, just like mindful practices, you're more in tune with your needs and your wants. And it makes everything else in your life so much better. And people want to be around you because you're so grounded. So
Mm.
that's really just where the messaging comes from. And again, like I just loved going to New York City workout classes. So I want to review different workouts and wellness challenges for people before they spend their money. So, like, there's the mental health aspect of it, but then there's also, I just geek out on workout classes and I like trying new things. So it's all of that combined.
Yeah, and I feel like also in your podcast you go more in depth with it because you have different chats with different people that kind of self care in very different ways, and I feel like that's very interesting to hear. Like I'm still obsessed with the episode with Erica about the Kundalini breath work. I listen to it at least once a week. I'm like I she gives me so
Really?
much peace of mind. Oh my gosh, she's the best. I don't know, her voice just already I'm like wow. I feel so calm now.
I love that. I love to hear that. I think the point of the podcast was like, let's bring other people into the conversation now. I felt
Mm.
like, or I feel like with YouTube, I have a certain topic that I talk about, or a certain how to video, or a certain wellness challenge, or a vlog, like showing how I'm productive. But I couldn't have like an in depth conversation and be super vulnerable, or else, or at least I felt like I couldn't because of just the nature of like, making a super choppy video and whatever. But I wanted to bring other
Entertaining.
people. Yeah, and it can be lonely. I love it, but I love this podcast now because I'm bringing other people in that can also talk about these topics and bring in new perspectives. And I have an expert on human design coming up. Like you said, I had a Kundalini expert, but then I just have entrepreneurs who talk about how they, take care of themselves. And I just love bringing other people into the conversation. And I'm trying to figure out a way to bring the whole community into the conversation outside of just the comment section on YouTube. So I think I might do a Facebook group. I'm just really trying to think of like how I can build this community out because the message is so strong and so it's important. Like not everyone has people in their lives and their family that they can talk to about these things. And I just think it's so cool that we can create these online communities and we've seen it like these huge influencers have
I
created
know.
these communities where people just write in a Facebook group like, "Hey, I'm going through this. Can someone help?" And it is so fucking cool, especially during a pandemic when we're all people are living alone, people are feeling alone and it's just so cool how we can build these communities around people who have similar interests or similar problems or similar demographic, and it's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like also with your podcast, you show people that there's not just one right way to do self care. Like what worked for you may not work for the other person. And I feel like that's the point, you know? Because I used to be like, oh, self care, I should do a bubble bath and all of these people that this person I follow does. And then I was like, no, I don't. I don't. I like my self care is with movement and working out. And that's where I find my me time, my peace of mind, my wow, I'm centered again, productivity. But if I stay seated down and try to do whatever people do, that just like, for example, meditation that you just have to sit down and kind of stay with your thoughts, I feel like I could go crazy because I have too many thoughts all the time. So
Yeah.
working out helps me, like it clears my mind, I'm somewhere else. So I feel like that's where I find a lot of value in your podcast. And you know, I'm a fan of your podcast. Like, I love it. And I feel like it's great to know that there's just not one way of self care. And again, I feel like that's the point, you know, of everything, of self care in itself.
I'm so glad that that's the message you're taking from my platforms, because that is such a strong message that I try to get across, because like you said, meditation can be super intimidating, but that's why I loved having Erica on the podcast, because I don't like to just sit in meditation. I do know and understand that it's a practice, and just sitting there in silence is uncomfortable at first and you have to build that muscle. But
Mm-hmm.
when I discovered Erica, I'm someone who like wants to be productive all the time.
Yeah,
So the
same.
fact that I could in a 10 minutes like do breath work, manifest, meditate, and like all of that in one, that's what fills me up. But other people want to be in silence, and there's not one way to do something. And if you don't meditate, it doesn't mean that you're not practicing self-care. And
Mm-hmm.
I think the word is just super intimidating. You're like, oh, I
Yes.
always hear people say like, I didn't do anything for myself today. I don't do self-care, like, I'm the worst, and that's
I don't
so
have
not what.
time. I don't have
Yes.
time. And I'm like,
But
I
then
do
I'm
have
like
time, but I don't want to admit it.
but also then I'm like, "Did you cook a meal today?" And they're like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Were you listening to a podcast or music or something?" They're like, "Yeah." Or like with your significant other, that's self-care. Like, that's a mindful thing. You're not on your phone, you're not on your computer, if that's something you enjoy. But then there's people, cooking stresses them the hell out and they don't wanna cook. So
Yeah.
it really depends on your personality, but it's fun to figure it out. Like, it's fun to try. Like I said before, I had never journaled before, and I was like, let's try this out. I found someone, Sophia Amato, she does journal prompts, and I'm having her on my podcast. So I was like, let me try out her journal prompts. And it just unfolded into something where now I just like freehand write whatever's on my mind, and it's
I'm writing
beautiful.
her name down.
Yeah,
Sorry. I'm
I'll
listening to you. I
send you
just
her.
wanted to remember.
Yeah, I'll send you her Instagram later, but it's things like that where it's like you just try things and you can either be like, "Oh, I hated that." For example, silent meditation, like, "Oh, I hated that. I was so anxious the whole time." Then you don't do it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it could be the other way around where you try a journal prompt and you're like, "Oh, wow, that was incredible." So, I think it's fun to try it out, and that's why I'm always trying out new wellness challenges and stuff on my YouTube, and I'm always asking at the beginning of each podcast, "What's your self-care tip?" Because it is wild
Yeah.
how different everyone's is. For example, Veggiekins, Remy Park just came on, and her self-care tip was sleep. People think it has to be something you're
Yeah.
doing during the day. But, like, just
Oh
not
my god, yes.
sacrificing your sleep is self-care, because you will feel so much better the next day. So that's why I love the podcast, because I'm always hearing new perspectives on it. And you're right. It's this message of not everything's going to work for everyone, but look how many different things you can do to take
Yeah.
care of yourself.
And also, I feel like I listened to that episode and she said sleep. And you know, when you have to pause and be like, have I been sleeping good? Like,
Yeah.
even if I sleep 10 hours, if I don't sleep with like a peace of mind or maybe not in a good position, then I wake up and I'm like, I am done with this. I want to go back to sleep. So, yeah, I feel like the sleep one really hit me. I was like, wow, is that a
Right.
message for me?
Right. Because people think, for example, I was just talking on a podcast yesterday actually about like hustle culture, and how this is the reason I like want to go part-time and everything, because there is so much on my plate. And I'll get to the point at the end of a long, long work day where I told myself I would edit a video to go up tomorrow. And I am just so drained and I feel like I can't do it. And the voice there's like that hustle culture voice of in my head that's like, well, everyone says that this is how you get to the top. Like, you just have to edit this video till 3 a.m. and sacrifice your sleep, and that's how you get to the top. But then the other voice in my head is like, your message is all about self care and taking care of yourself. You are not sacrificing your sleep and your mental health to get this video up. That is not the message we're putting across. So that is why I'm going to end up going part time and everything, because I won't sacrifice my sleep. I won't sacrifice my mental health, because then my message, my energy on the podcast, my energy on my YouTube channel, none of it will be genuine. None of it will be aligned. And so all of that comes with tuning in and checking in like you did. I'm checking in. Am I getting enough sleep? Am I sacrificing my sleep for my podcast and in turn sabotaging myself and my podcast? So it's all about checking in.
Oh my god, yes. And again, I feel like until someone says it, you don't really think about it. Like, you have to sleep, you probably sleep, but I was sleeping 4 hours a day. And I was like, this is not
Oh,
working. This is not working. And or I will stay working weekends until like 2 a.m. because I didn't finish a podcast episode. And then I was like, this is not healthy, Camila. We need to take a step back.
yeah, and
So
that's
yeah.
when like productivity comes in, because
Mm.
putting it in my I know that that will happen if I don't put it in my Google Calendar and I like don't make the time to edit the podcast, for example. So that's where like the productivity comes in, because it actually can help your mental health if you were just more organized and have times allotted to do things so that you're done at a certain time. And don't get me wrong, way harder than it sounds, but it's all
Yeah.
about finding your systems, finding your self-care, and like it takes time to nail it down. Like we were saying, you love your routines. It's probably because you know it works for you. So you want to keep going with it. But sometimes you need to check in and be like, maybe I need a night routine now. Like maybe I need to make sure that my screen time on my phone goes off at 10 p.m., which makes me realize, like, oh, I have to be washing up for bed. Like things like that.